from the University of Fort Hare's Alice campus showing a female student being mercilessly kicked by a male student. The victim has reportedly decided not to lay charges as she is in a relationship with her attacker, but it is understood that the university will be taking action against him. It's also reported that 100 women are raped in our country every day. On the agenda now, we'll welcome you to a panel discussion and would like you to take part on the scourge of sexual violence and rape on our university campuses. On the panel, we have Professor Sizwe Mabizela. He's the Vice Chancellor at Rhodes University, and Professor Catriona McLeod. She's the chair of the South African Research Chairs Initiative, also from Rhodes. We also have other guests that Blaine will introduce.
Yeah, we have we have Crystal Dix, the director of WIT's Gender Equity Office. And then in the middle, we have Sisipo Kachimba, and she's a student, as well as Athini Boy. Thank you very much indeed for your time. So ladies, let me just start with you, maybe Athini. Yesterday, Desiree saw you guys outside UJ, was it?
Just here.
Just here outside, well, near the SABC.
Yes.
And you, just the two of you, were having a silent protest.
Yes.
Why?
It's because of the recent incidents that have been happening, like the issue of Kensani and other females that were actually expressing themselves through a hashtag #MeToo on social media. So this other time we were in a room and then we're like, no, something needs to be done. We need to do something. And they're like, oh, okay, let's organize a march. And then we went to school. We tried to gather like few females, but then people were actually scared. They backed down. And then we're like, no, we're not going to stop. It's not about numbers. It's about sending the message through, like, to the universe out there. So we started from APK. We just walked silently with our placards down the road. We stood there for like hours. Like we're not gonna stop. Even if it's just the two of us, we're gonna stand there.
Sisipo, why do you think you didn't get a buy-in by other females as well in terms of supporting you guys in this?
You see, we arrived there at UJ next to the library, and then we had girls there. But then we were told that the march was not legal. We didn't go through the right procedures for us to be able to do the march. So we asked the girls to come with us, and then people were like, no, what if we get in trouble? But we were in a mindset of we're doing the right thing, so what's wrong with what we're doing? So that's why we went ahead with the march.
Crystal Dix, this talks to a larger problem, isn't it? In terms of, we have this problem of under-reporting sexual assault. Many women are maybe scared, or they are currently in a relationship with a person that is actually inflicting violence. Do you find that is one of the reasons why people are not reporting?
Well, there's incredible amounts of underreporting that happens, and there are a number of reasons. I mean, the first reason is that in the university context or the higher education context is because victims don't have faith that justice will be served. Victims don't know where to go. Victims don't think that they will be believed. Victims fear re-traumatization. They fear being slut-shamed. They fear being victim-blamed. It's incredibly hard to actually come forward and report an incident.
Desiree, the Rhodes University has been in the spotlight of late, isn't it? We had the incident with Kensani Maseko. You have two guests from there. You have the Vice Chancellor. Let's find out what's the situation there.
Absolutely. Let's bring in our two other guests into the conversation. Professor Sizwe Mabizela, who's the VC at Rhodes University, and Professor Catriona McLeod. And Professor Mabizela, we will start with you. You were very involved in the processes of the funeral process of Kensani Sithole. But Rhodes University has had issues with the existence of disregard for female rights for a while now. Why did you choose to be involved in this particular one?
I've always been involved with the issues relating to sexual and gender-based violence. When I became the Vice Chancellor, I deliberately chose the issue of sexual and gender-based violence that it be located within the office of the Vice Chancellor. So it is something that has always been very important to me. It was not only when the tragic death of Kensani Maseko happened, this is something that is being driven within the office of the Vice Chancellor.
Professor McLeod, you're one of the 60 members of the Sexual Violence Task Team at Rhodes. How often do you engage with students on the scourge?
Well, the sexual violence task team no longer exists as a task team per se. It was set up as a sort of temporary measure to investigate the claims around the rape culture protests in 2016 and to inspect our policies and to get input from a variety of people, including students and staff members, to read the literature, to look at the research, and to come up with recommendations. So the sexual violence task team really existed from April 2016 until December 2016, where we handed over the report to the university community, which made these various recommendations. So the question of now engaging is not really relevant, because that wasn't, the sexual violence task team was literally to put together the report.
Prof. Mabizela, what is the mood like on campus this week? We were talking about roads the whole week, last week. And what lessons were learned from this process?
Look, there are really important lessons to be learned here. If I could just go back to the issue of the task team on gender-based violence. When we had student protests in April 2016, I requested Professor McLeod to constitute a task team to look into issues of sexual and gender-based violence. The task team produced 93 recommendations, and those have been processed, and most of them are being implemented at the moment. Right now, the campus is quiet, but I think the death of Kensani underlines the fact that issues of sexual and gender-based violence in our institution and our society more broadly still need to be attended to. There's a lot more that needs to be done to rid our society of this pernicious scourge of sexual and gender-based violence.
Of course, as always, we're inviting our viewers to take part in our conversation. Blaine, what's happening on your side?
Yeah, you know, the Professor Atini speaks about this pernicious scourge of sexual violence in our institutions. And it's not only here in South Africa, it's a global phenomenon, well, global problem rather than phenomenon, it's a global problem. We were talking off air about the, say for instance, in America, the Me Too campaign. And I was reading an interesting stat with regards to that. They started in 2006, by the way, and we only hear about it now with regards to the Harvey Weinstein issues and stuff like that. But they were saying that since 1998, 17.7 million women reported sexual assaults. So I guess it talks to women are not alone. When you talk to your peers and family members, do they realize that they're not alone if they're going through this, and it's safe now to talk out?
It's not really easy to even talk about those things in our families. It's like, oh, okay, this is what happened, but then nothing's going to be done. It's like, oh, okay, you'll be okay. They don't really check up on you after that. It's like, oh, okay, it's going to pass. It's just, to them, it's like it's just a phase, and it's not.
Sisipo, why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's this perception about everything will be okay if you just relax, keep it quiet kind of thing?
I wouldn't know. They'd know, because because for me, rape is a lifetime thing. Because I feel like once you're raped, it's like a person takes out your soul. You're a box, really, an empty box when someone rapes you. So I wouldn't understand why they'd say it's a phase, because it's never gonna pass. It's never.
If women go through this, are there enough safe spaces in institutions, in society in general, for people to go to?
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Even the police, they don't. Do police even take rape cases seriously? They do, but I feel like the fact that we're even having this conversation today means that there are not enough platforms for people to go out there and say I've been raped. I mean, being raped is not like being robbed. You can just go out there and say, guys, today I was robbed. It's not. It's something very sensitive. And this thing in black families where one gets raped, it's a thing of you can't spit it out in family meetings because it's going to affect the family. It's gonna cause segregation within the family. So even families, they should be the first ones to support us when we're faced with rape.
Crystal Dix, let me throw that to you in terms of law enforcement and they taking the issue of rape seriously. From your research, what do you find?
So I think I want to bring it back to academia because we're talking about rape culture in higher education institutions. And I think my first point is that we need to realize, because you quote what's going on in #MeToo and the global movement, that academia poses proximity to offender situations. I mean, that's the first point. This is the nature of an academic environment because of institutional culture and institutional power that exists within the institution. In academia, we need to create mechanisms and systems and policies and processes to support victims who come forward. We cannot entirely rely on the policing system. I mean, in our context, when victims come forward, particularly if it's violent sexual assault or rape, we encourage criminal processes. But there's no faith, there's no confidence in the criminal justice system. Our experience has shown that the criminal justice system continues to fail victims. And if we want to create a safe and enabling learning environment for our students, we need to be doing the work within academia.
So I guess, Des, the question is, where does the solution lie, especially in higher education institutions here in South Africa?
Professors, we're back with you. Professor McLeod, you're saying that the task team is not operational anymore. But what kind of enlightening conversations came out of that process that can take us ahead, not only in terms of Rhodes University, but the entire higher education fraternity nationally, because this is not only a Rhodes problem.
Yeah. Indeed. Thank you for that question, and that's exactly what we need to do, is to start thinking in complex and multifaceted ways. This is not, as has been said, it's not a simple solution. There is no simple solution, but there are multiple things that we can do and that we can start to do differently. And it's absolutely clear that we do have to start thinking differently about how we approach sexual violence and violence in general, gender-based violence in general. We can't just carry on doing the same old, same old. So what the Sexual Violence Task Team did is to try to look at best practices, try to put on the table suggestions for exactly how to make things, complainants to feel more safe, to give them support in going through the processes that they need to go through. And that support can come in from multiple directions, but one of the ways in which we spoke about was to have what we call support advocates, which would be somebody who is not a psychologist, it's not a lawyer, but it's somebody who's on your side, who understands the processes, who will walk with you through each of the stages that you go through, depending on what your decisions are. And what you, as a person who knows your life, decides on, and to support you in your decisions and in going through these various processes to reduce the secondary traumatization and to reduce stigma, etc. So that's one of the recommendations that we made. We made a whole lot of other recommendations, and all of them are trying to say, look, we need to think about things differently. We need to do things differently. We need to make it easy for people to report cases of sexual violence. And of course, so the report basically recommended a three-pronged justice approach, which is having a lot of support for people to go through the criminal justice system. We want it to be as easy and as not traumatizing for people to go through the criminal justice system. To have a very rigorous disciplinary system within the university. And then, so that's the retributive justice. We also spoke about reparative justice, which is really your preventive work. It's about changing not only the material conditions under which violence is perpetuated, but also the symbolic conditions, how we speak about women, how we speak about sexualities, how we understand gender relations, what people are or aren't entitled to do. and how sexual interactions should proceed, and the place of men and women within society. So that's a clear thing that we need to deal with. It's the preventive work, the reparative justice, actually putting lots of resources, human resources, financial resources, into undermining what we call rape culture. The other facet of that report was what we called restorative justice, which is where, and this is not uncontroversial, but the process there is, if the person does not wish to go through any retributive justice systems, they are not prepared for whatever reason, whether it's because they know the person, whether it's because they don't want to be re-traumatized, or whether it's because there really isn't the kind of physical evidence that's required for prosecution, that there's a process, that there's a range of options open to them to feel that there's some form of justice. So restorative justice is about recognizing harms and getting to the stage where there's an apology and some kind of restorative action that's agreed upon between the complainant and the alleged perpetrator. There's also processes, for example, of remedial discussions where a complainant does not wish to go any further with any processes, but does wish to just simply report the matter. And if the university feels that the matter is serious enough, that there can be some discussions around appropriate action and sexual offences with the person who is alleged to have perpetrated these actions, without obviously any particular allegations being made.
We're in a conversation with our viewers this morning about whether higher learning institutions are taking rape seriously. And Blaine, you have a caller?
Yeah, we're encouraging you to give us a call on 011-714-6841. We have Professor Mkhize from Fourways. Very good morning to you, Professor Mkhize. What's your comment?
Thank you very much for taking my call. I really wanted to address the university management there as they are talking about this issue that often universities has got stringent measures when a student has crossed the line. Like, for instance, if a student, when writing exam, is caught copying or having some material that is using, they know the sanctions are severe. Professor Mabizela will know, while I was a Minister of Higher Education, I had strong views which I put before him in terms of saying universities should be able to act decisively so as to send a clear message to the whole university community that women's rights are sacrosanct on campus, and they will toe a line. But as long as the approach is academic, we will support them, it's counseling, then it doesn't send a clear message to young men on campus coming from societies where there's no respect for women. They just see many women bodies and they think it's up to them to exploit them as they like. So my position really is that universities have to be decisive and send a clear message. Out of the roots process, I thought the outcomes of the task team would be more concrete, directed, and really sending a message. In my view, I'm sorry to say that, Professor Mabizela, they were really wishy-washy, and if I was a potential perpetrator, there was no threat, no danger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Mabizela, there's a colleague right there. What kind of conversations are you having with your counterparts in the more than 29 higher learning institutions in the country about, and also with government, about the recognition of sexual crimes against students, especially incorporating this into your policies?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the comment from Professor Mkhize. And I think the point that she made is very important, and we must acknowledge that sexual and gender-based violence is a societal problem, and that universities exist within societies and that we all have a collective responsibility as families, as communities, as schools, as faith-based organizations. All of us have a responsibility to confront this scourge. The report that we received from the task team was very clear, and we have consistently conveyed a very clear and unambiguous message that whoever violates another person, if caught, will be prosecuted to the full extent of our disciplinary processes, and if found guilty, will be expelled from the university. And so there is absolutely no ambiguity about that. All vice-chancellors, 26 of them, are committed to ensuring that we rid our higher education system of this pernicious scourge of sexual and gender-based violence. There is a new policy which is being discussed at the moment that will cover all universities and TVET colleges, but I can assure you that all my colleagues are completely unequivocal about the need for us to double and redouble our efforts to rid our higher education system of this pernicious scourge. And so I'm sorry that Professor Mkiza thinks that the report was wishy-washy, but fact of the matter is, certainly at Rhodes, we have a two-pronged approach. The first prize is to prevent any sexual or gender-based violence from occurring. So we want to stop it before it happens. And in the event someone falls victim to such, we commit to investigating that matter and bringing the perpetrator to book. And we have made it very clear. If you are found guilty of sexual violence or rape, you will be expelled from Rhodes University. I don't know how much stronger our message could be more than that. But I think the most important thing, let us recognize this as a social and a societal problem which needs to be addressed at various levels, and it is important to look at how we raise and socialize our children, and we need to challenge the views and the myths that enable and facilitate patriarchy and misogynistic cultures in our society.
Yeah, Crystal Dix, you heard what the professor says. Are we punishing, though, the perpetrators enough or adequately enough?
So it's easy to say that we're committed to eradicating rape culture and GBV. And it's easy to say that we will locate this in the offices of the VCs. And it's easy to say that this is a societal problem that we need to deal with. The fundamental problem that those of us working in the space to eradicate the scourge on campus encounters is a culture from senior management. Often, I'm not saying necessarily in the WITS context, Rhodes is very guilty of this, of enabling and protecting rape culture. You can't enable and protect rape culture on the one hand, and on the other, say you're opposed to it and you're dealing with it. What you need is a system and a policy that allows and encourages victims to come forward and to report incidents and to feel supported and to feel believed when they come forward. What you need, because of the epidemic of GBV, you need to institute the onus, the principle of reverse onus, because you have to understand why it's so difficult for victims to come forward in the first place. You should not punish those who protest around rape culture or gender-based violence on campus. The fact that protests happened, the fact that mob justice prevails is because people don't have faith in the systems that are created to protect and support them. So it's very easy to say we want to fight first, we're dealing with it at the highest level, etc. What you need to do is to actually make it happen in a real and meaningful way so that victims can come forward and be open to wanting to talk about issues, to feel that the university is serving their interests. We can talk about the societal issue. There are many initiatives going on that front. What are we doing in the university environment? What is University South Africa, an institution where all these forums, where all these VCs sit? What are they doing to genuinely tackle rape culture. Wits University made a comprehensive contribution on the Department of Higher Education's draft policy framework on gender-based violence. We're waiting to see what the next steps are on those. What have the other universities done in this regard, we ask?
Professor Mabizela, do you want to comment on that?
We have all made contributions to that draft policy. And as I indicated, we have a two-pronged approach. One is prevention, but the other one is to ensure that those who fall victim to sexual or gender-based violence are supported in every possible way, and that they are able to report these, and appropriate action is taken against those who commit such horrendous offenses. And of course, we do support them if they choose to report the matter at the South African Police Service, and we provide counseling and every conceivable support that they might need to make sure that we successfully prosecute any person who commits such an offense.
So we've been asking you the entire morning to take part in our poll, where we ask you, do institutions of higher learning take rape seriously? Let's take a look now at some of your comments.
Okay, so far, well, Olani is saying, I doubt if all of them have sexual harassment policies to prevent these rapes. If they had, there wouldn't be so many rapes.
At Ikona Nazo says sexual assaults have been covered and hidden by families for ages. It even crossed to places of learning because of these families. All right, those are your comments for now, and we really value them. Professor Mabizela, do you think the perception that the commitments are disingenuous is misplaced?
Well, look, I can only make a commitment, and I can ensure that our university and all its procedures and processes do respond as best as possible to these challenges. And that really is what one can do. And as I've indicated, it is my responsibility, it is your responsibility, it is our responsibility to confront the scourge of sexual and gender-based violence.
We have on the line Lindelwa from PE. Lindelwa, what's on your mind this morning?
Thank you very much. What is in my mind this morning, what I am really finding it a bit absent, is the role of parents, the role of the society, because at the end, these children are born from homes. Homes, some of them have been in a very patriarchal, grew up in a very patriarchal system. I think, yes, universities are to have these policies and whatever, people that are assigned to look into the gender-based violence. But is it not important now that we have a very robust debate in our communities? That's my point. I'm finding it a bit, and I'm subject to correction, I'm finding it a bit gray there, that it is not coming up. It's more about the role of the university. Yes, you must balance. That child is coming from my home who has got a boy child and a girl child. In particular, a boy child who must be taught from home how to respect a girl. Thank you very much.
Lindelwa from PE, thank you very much indeed for your comment. We will discuss that with a panel in a short while, but we have Evelyn from Mpumalanga now on the line. Evelyn, very good morning to you. What's your comment?
Hi, how are you, sir?
Very well, and you?
No, I'm good. I think we as parents, we should have to teach our children so that even if maybe you've got your friend or a girlfriend, not to go to bed. It must be just your normal friends, and not think otherwise, because most of the children, once they've got a boyfriend, they think of going to bed, which is unacceptable in our society, you know. We should, each and every parent should have to teach his son, so that when we've got your friends, you don't have sex with those people until the right time. It's okay. Look, now we have lost our daughter, a beautiful young girl, just because a boyfriend forced her to go to sleep with her, you know. It's unacceptable. I think all the parents, we should have to know that. We should have to have the responsibility to teach our children about that.
Evelyn, thank you very much indeed for your comments. Let me put it to the panel. I mean, should we start re-looking at how we raise and socialize the male child, you know? I mean, because in terms of sexual harassment, boys will be boys excuse doesn't cut it anymore, isn't it? A friend of mine was writing an opinion piece and it sums it up succinctly when she says that by reducing sexual harassment to a natural male behavior, we make women the victim instead of the villain instead of the victim, isn't it? What's your thoughts about how we raise the boy child?
You see, when it comes to families, it's always about the girl. You need to cover up from a young age. You need to close your legs. You need to do this. What about the boys? Like what's being said to them? Don't hit girls. Don't do this to girls. It's always about girls. You need to cover up. Don't play with boys. Do this. Do this. What about them? I think that's why they grow up thinking that they have so much when it comes to us. They can just do anything to us because from a young age, it's always about us. Do this. Don't do this.
Is you share the same sentiment?
I agree. It's very disturbing to see that it's only the girls that we're not focusing on, and they're the ones that are the victims. As you said, we're playing as if the girls are the villains here, and we're not really. It's up to the parents to tell the boys, don't hit the girl from a young age. Don't do this to girls. And this thing she's talking about, we were told to cover up. Why should we cover up? Why not teach the boys not to look? Why not teach the boy not to react to when they see a private part of a girl? Why not teach them?
Yeah. Des, we have another caller?
Nthabiseng is a commissioner at the Gender Commission. We welcome you to the show. How would you like to contribute to this conversation, Nthabiseng?
I just want to point out one thing. I'm happy about the use of the word rape culture. Culture is generally a positive word in the sense that it comes from a bona fide place. It comes from a place where people do things. It is custom, it is practice, it is acceptable. It may evolve as there is growth, enlightenment, and development, but culture is not negative. Rape is a negative. It is not a culture, it is a rape crime. So once we start saying culture, we almost are suggesting that rape is a way of doing things. How do we move away from that? Rape is custom. How do we move away from that? Rape is acceptable. How do we... No, we cannot use that word. It is not a culture. Culture, be it church culture, any culture, any way of doing things, it is a norm. It's a positive thing.
Granted, we hear you, but while we have you on the line, how is the Gender Commission having a conversation about this phenomena, however you might want to call it?
We are having conversations across the board, not only on rape, which we have actually spearheaded a number of campaigns, but also about ukutwala and child marriages, which we have clubbed together with this kind of crime, where young girls are taken forcefully and made to...
Okay, we seem to have lost Nthabiseng there, but let's bring in Professor Mabizela. Lindelwa from PE was raising what you spoke about earlier, the role of parents, the role of society. You were talking about a collective responsibility. Outside of the student community, how are you interacting with society and parents in terms of finding solutions?
We do interact with our local community, particularly in Makanda. But I really want to underline the point that was made. We need to have open and honest conversations with our boys and with our girls about relationships and how they need to be handled. And these things are very important, and parents have an important role to play in that regard. And secondly, we should stop admonishing girls about what they should or should not wear, what they should or should not do in order to protect themselves from being raped. We should just tell young men not to rape women, period. And this for me is very, very important. We have invested a lot of time and energy in ensuring that young women do not expose themselves to the risk of rape. And we have spent very little time to talk to the young men to say, They have absolutely no right to interfere with the bodily integrity of any other person.
Professor McLeod, there was a time in your interactions with the student body about this conversation where you were quoted to have said that addressing sexual violence on the campus is a long-term process, something that the students disagreed with because they wanted immediate answers from the institution. What is the conversation now? Are we talking about being reactive, or are we talking about just having conversations?
No, I'm not entirely sure what the question means. We are being reactive and having conversations, both and. I think the conversation goes on, and if I may just speak to the notion of rape culture and the concern about using that word. And indeed, it's not necessarily a term that is unproblematic. But what it is useful shorthand for saying that the ways in which we interact within society, those ways actually facilitate the idea that sexual violence is okay. Now, what will happen often actually in sexual encounters is that people will see this as their right to have sex with somebody else, and they don't see it as sexual violence or see it as rape in any way. And that is what rape culture is that it actually fosters those kinds of ideas within our social imagination. So while it may not be a unproblematic term, it certainly helps us to start thinking about what are the kinds of messages, what are the kinds of narratives that we tell about people, what are the kinds of interactions that perpetuate the idea that sexual violence is acceptable, or this is an acceptable way of interacting. And I want to give you an example of that. You know, when Anine Boyson's, that tragic case with Anine Boyson's happened, on that, one of the nights when I was watching television, they were talking about that, and then it went on, the news went on to women's cricket. And at that stage, I thought to myself, there's a link here between this terrible rape and murder and the notion of women's cricket. And where's that link? The link is that we speak about women's cricket. It's not cricket.
Yeah.
It's women's cricket, which means that women are always, when you are describing something, you've got to have women in front of it to make sure that you understand that this is what we're talking about.
Totally.
When you talk about men's cricket, you don't say men's cricket, you just say cricket.
Time is against us, and I'm going to have to ask you to stop there.
Okay, sure.
I'm going to have to ask you to stop there, but thank you so much for making the time, to both of you, Professor Katrina McLeod, who's with the university, the Rhodes University, and the Vice-Chancellor at the same institution, Professor Sizwe Mabizela. Thank you that you made the time. Blaine?
Yeah, I guess the process of systematic change is both difficult and complex, isn't it? And there needs to be the sustained effort in order for us to get over this line and achieve this nirvana that we all aiming for, I guess. Adini, what's your closing comment?
I just want to say that I wish in our universities they can actually have a system whereby we can actually go there without having to think, okay, yes, I'm going to go there, but what if I don't get the support? What if they don't believe me? Can they actually support us? Can they not question us when we get there? Were you drunk? What were you wearing? Can they stop with that? We need support from them.
Stop blaming the victim, I guess,
Yes.
isn't it, Sisipo?
Yes, that's it. And this thing that happened yesterday when we were trying to protest and then we were stopped because we didn't follow the right procedure. Can I just get on campus and shout out loud, stop raping women, and that can that pass? Can it not be a thing that I have to follow procedure for my voice to be heard at universities?
Mm-hmm. Crystal?
I mean, I would say we need to create a culture where this is not enabled, where perpetrators are not being protected. We must deal with sexual violence on campus in the same way we deal with plagiarism or exam cheating. Yeah. And we need to have safer spaces for women to speak out and for women in particular, but also other non-gender conforming identities, to come forward and speak out about the victimization in a safe, comfortable space. And the university must be seen to be doing something, not just speaking about it.
Athene, Sisipo and Crystal, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. There's, I guess, still lots more work to be done, but
there's
it
never
is
enough time for a conversation such as this one, but I suppose we'll continue to have these opportunities on the program. Thank you so much for watching.
We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Have yourself a great day, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.